This is Tom Fox. I'd like to welcome you to the Compliance Week 2022 podcast series. Compliance Week is thrilled to be back 100% live and in person after 3 years apart. Back for its 17th year at Compliance Week National 2022, compliance, ethics, legal, and audit professionals will gain insights and make connections at the industry's premier cross-industry national compliance event, offering knowledge-packed, accredited sessions and take-home advice from the most influential leaders in the compliance community. In this podcast series, we will detail some of the speakers and what they will be discussing at the event and why they're attending Compliance Week 2022. I hope you will join me in attending this conference, and particularly this year when it's literally the first major compliance conference which will be held live since the pandemic began. We link to the conference in the show notes, and listeners to this podcast get a special discount, which is also listed in the show notes. I hope to see you in May at Compliance Week 2022. In this episode, I visit with Josh Fitzhugh. He is Director of Trade Compliance at Flex. His presentation will be on the current state of trade sanctions and trade compliance and what you can do in this ever-changing environment. I know you'll enjoy this episode. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, back for another episode. And today I have with me Josh Fitzhugh. Josh, first of all, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
Thank you, Tom. It's a real pleasure.
Josh, you are attending Compliance Week 2022. And before we get to that, I was wondering if you could tell our listeners what your current role is.
So I'm a vice president of global trade at Flex. So I'm responsible ultimately for our trade compliance across both export and import sides. So that's export controls, sanctions, embargoes, and then import controls like customs duties, et cetera.
So Josh, you are on a panel entitled Multi-Perspective Panel, How to Navigate International Sanctions. And first of all, that title, I think, encompasses your panel as well as any other title of a panel presentation, because it truly is a multi-perspective. And frankly, I can't think of a more relevant or even timely topic than what you guys are going to talk about. So I was wondering if you could maybe give a few words about what you hope to communicate in this panel, and also really about the breadth and scope of the panel if you've had the chance to visit with them.
Yeah, certainly, Tom. So it is a very exciting topic. I'll say that. I've spent most of my career dealing with export controls and sanctions, so I love to talk about this. And we do have a great panel. There are four of us. We have industry, so a couple of us from industry. We have somebody from the government themselves, so we're very privileged to have Lawrence Scheinert. He's the Associate Director for Compliance and Enforcement at the Office of Foreign Assets Control, or OFAC, as most people call them. We have an attorney, so a partner from a law firm who has done a lot of work on sanctions and related compliance topics. And then we have myself and Laura Martino. Laura is from Global Jet Capital. So they're very involved in aviation finance. So we have a pretty good perspective here across our panel, and I'm really looking forward to the topics that we're planning to talk about. And so basically, those break down into kind of where are we on sanctions at the moment? So what are the current trends? What are the current regulations that are getting the most attention? Then we're also going to talk a little bit about how do we deal with that as an industry? So the fact that sanctions are changing and the fact that there's a lot more focus on them now in many of our companies and across industry. How do we, in the corporate world, or if we're advising corporations, how do we manage with these changes and the increasing focus that we're seeing? So we'll talk about some tips some practical examples and some case studies about how we have managed sanctions compliance over this past few years when it's been changing so much. And then we're also going to try and project a little bit into the future. So we all know sanctions are changing. They're becoming more closely aligned with export controls. They're becoming more closely aligned with foreign investment regimes like CFIUS. So what do we think is going to happen in the future? And then how do we manage that as well? So there's really a lot of room. My concern is we won't have enough time rather than not having too much time. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, Josh, now I'd like to turn to your reasons for attending Compliance Week 2022. What do you hope to get out of the event?
So first off, I am kind of a compliance nerd, so I'm looking forward to being around lots of other compliance nerds. So we'll spend a lot of time talking on the sidelines about everything that's happening, trying to connect all of these trends together, and just getting a more holistic view than each of us is able to get from within our own company or our own law firm or wherever we are, into what's really happening in compliance. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm really excited to be part of the dialogue, to be able to be on a panel with somebody from OFAC who can provide insider information pseudo insider information about their perspective. So giving us the government's perspective on what's happening. That's very exciting to me. And then some of it is just being live, back in with people as well, having a whole 3-day session where we can be in person, talking to people who are following the same trends that I'm following, and can help me understand them better. So just knowledge sharing, benchmarking, and camaraderie.
Well, Josh, I'm looking forward to meeting you at Compliance Week 2022, and I hope our listeners will join both of us in attending this event.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. I'm looking forward to it as well.
This is Tom Fox again. I hope you'll plan to join me at Compliance Week 2022. Registration information is found in the show notes. And of course, there's a discount code for listeners to this podcast that I've listed in the show notes as well. It's going to be a great conference. We're all going to be able to get together in a full conference for the first time since the pandemic began. I hope you will plan to join me and all of your fellow compliance professionals at Compliance Week 2022.